Some time ago, in Kumasi, Ghana, there was a compound where tenants lived under a government that nobody voted for. Yes, the president, the conqueror, the emperor, the chairman, immigration officer, and Supreme Court judge were all the same person. Wado Mensa, the almighty landlord. Now, every landlord has rules, yeah? But Mr. Mensa treated rules like the way some people treat grandchildren. He kept producing new ones every month. His rules were always so stupid and funny. Nobody was allowed to bathe after 7 p.m. because, according to our emperor, water makes noise at night and will disturb the neighbors. Till this day, nobody knows what that means. Cooking after 8 p.m. was forbidden because the smell of food disturbed his sleep. One tenant asked how the smell of stew could travel through 3 buildings and still find his bedroom. The tenant received a warning letter the next morning. Oh, take your time. Oh. Visitors were not allowed to sit outside after 6 p.m. Football discussions had to end before sunset. Phone calls near the gates were considered public disturbance. One woman was warned because she laughed so hard while talking to her sister that the landlord accused her of creating unnecessary happiness. The man even had a notebook. Oh, whenever somebody broke a rule, he wrote their name down as if he was preparing a report for the president of Ghana. The punishments were worse. Haba. If he was angry here, he would lock up the whole water tap. If he was angry, he would lock the gate. Or if he was extremely angry, he would call a compound meeting and he would talk for 2 hours while everybody stood under the sun regretting their life choices. The tenants complained every blessed day. They complained while washing plates, fetching water, even while returning from work. Anytime they complained to the landlord, he will give them an option. Move out. Okay? There are many houses in Ghana. Go to another compound. But then rent in Kumasi had become so expensive that moving out remained a beautiful dream that they couldn't afford. So everybody endured. Among the tenants was one man named Kojo. This man has been searching for work for almost 1 year. He was a very respectful young guy, helpful and so well liked that even the compound gossip queen liked him. That alone was a miracle worthy of national recognition. Then there was Prince, the landlord's son. If Kwado Mensah was the president of suffering, Prince was the minister in charge of enforcement. Whenever his dad traveled, Prince became drunk on borrowed authority. He invented rules nobody had even heard of before. He inspected people's buckets as if he worked for the Ministry of Water Affairs. He monitored visitors. He counted chairs outside people's doors. One evening, he even warned a tenant for eating roasted corn too close to the gate because it was creating congestion. Can you imagine? The tenants hated arguing with the landlord, but they hated Prince professionally. The hate is on another level for this small boy. In fact, if the compound ever organized an election for most annoying human being, father and son would come first and second. It was a lot. Oh. Living under Mr. Mensah was like participating in a reality TV show where nobody could win. The man created punishments with passion. One evening, the compound gossip queen, Auntie Abena, returned late from the market and bathed at exactly 7:15 p.m. The next morning, she discovered that the water tap had been locked with a shiny new padlock. When she asked why, the landlord replied, "Actions have consequences." The woman nearly poured the bucket of water on his head. A few days later, a mechanic named Kwesi returned from work after fixing a customer's car outside town. He arrived at 9 p.m. and found the gates locked. He knocked until his knuckles became tired. Mr. Mensah refused to open. The poor man ended up sleeping on a wooden bench outside like a security guard who forgot his own keys. The deal here was that anytime one person offended the landlord, the entire compound suffered. If he was angry like this with one tenant, everybody would just collect. They would lose access to water. They could lose access to some other basic things. If he was upset about noise, he switched off the outdoor lights. The punishments were so dramatic that people started checking his mood before making ordinary, simple, basic human decisions. Soon, the tenants gave him a secret nickname, the Minister of Punishment. And just like that, everybody started calling him that. In private, of course. One afternoon, an elderly tenant forgot himself and said, "Good afternoon, Minister of Punishment." Everywhere went silent. Even the chickens stopped moving. Mr. Mensah slowly turned around and the old man immediately pretended to cough and he started speaking about the weather. Meanwhile, Prince was becoming an even bigger headache. His father punished people openly, but Prince preferred secret operations. Lights would suddenly go off. Bathroom keys would suddenly disappear. The water tap would mysteriously stop working. One tenant's slippers would vanish from outside her door and reappear 3 days later on top of a water tank. Prince always claimed innocence. "Why are you looking at me like that, eh?" The annoying part was that everybody knew he was responsible, but nobody could prove it. The boy was so smart. One evening, after Mr. Mensah had gone out and Prince had disappeared to wherever assistant dictators go after work, the tenants gathered behind Auntie Abena's room for an emergency meeting. This one is suffering meeting. Everybody came carrying complaints. The moment they sat down, hey, the story started flying up and down. Percy the mechanic raised his hand and started. "I received a warning letter because I sneezed." Everybody laughed. But Percy didn't laugh. Oh, "I am serious. The letter said my sneeze disrupted the peace and harmony of the compound." Can you people imagine? At that point, one woman nearly fell off her chair. Then Auntie Mansa took over. She said Prince once accused her of wasting water because she washed two blankets on the same day. So, my people, what was I supposed to do, eh? Wash one blanket now and save the second one for my grandchildren? Eh? The laughter became louder. Then Auntie Akoswa shared her own story. She had fried fish one Saturday afternoon, and the next day, Mr. Mensah gave her a warning. Apparently, the smell of fish had entered his window and disturbed his afternoon rest. The woman still wanted to know how her fish ignored every other window in the compound and traveled straight into his bedroom like a guided missile. "Oga landlord, tell me if you want to chop fish, tell me and I go give you make you chop." By now, people were wiping tears from their eyes. One tenant confessed that he stopped laughing freely in the compound because he was afraid somebody would measure the volume and report him. Even Kojo joined. He said living in the compound felt like preparing for an exam whose questions changed every single second. All of them were laughing, oh, but then they realized something, that none of them actually enjoy living there. They were enduring the same father and son combination from the pit of hell. The only reason nobody had packed out was because rent was expensive. Moving out sounded so wonderful until somebody checked the prices of house and immediately returned to prayer and patience. The meeting ended with a unanimous conclusion. All of them hoped that one day, very soon, the landlord and his son would meet somebody they could not bully, and the person would teach them a very serious lesson. Now, just a few days later, Kojo received an invitation for a job interview. The entire compound celebrated as if Ghana had qualified for the World Cup final. People shook his hands, prayed for him, and gave him advice he didn't even ask for. And for the first time in months, the compound had something to look forward to. They were so happy for him. On the day of the interview, Yawa was ready to gas. By 5:50 a.m., Kojo was ready. His shirt was well ironed. His shoes were shining. His file was tucked neatly under his arm. After months of rejection emails and motivational speeches from relatives, this interview, it felt like his biggest opportunity yet. He was so optimistic. Then when he got to the gate, the gate was locked. Kojo just stared at the padlock, and the padlock stared back at him. Ha! Kojo hissed loudly and marched to the landlord's door. Mr. Mensah opened the door looking like a man whose destiny was to frustrate people before breakfast. Oga landlord, sir, please, I have an interview. Can you please open the gate? The landlord listened carefully, nodded, yawned, and then said, gate opens at 7. Kojo laughed, but the landlord didn't. Kojo thought, is this man joking or what? But when he found out the man was actually serious, the laughter on his face disappeared. They kept going back and forth until the entire compound woke up. Even Auntie Abena came out tying her wrapper. Kwesi appeared with toothpaste foam still in his mouth. One woman brought out a plastic chair and sat down comfortably because she knew premium entertainment was about to unfold. Everybody started begging this man. Oga landlord, sir, open the gate. It is just one day. This is an emergency now. This boy has suffered enough. This interview is very important. Tototum, Mr. Mensah stood like a monument and he said, rules are rules. Even Prince was standing nearby enjoying himself. The boy was smiling so much that people wanted to knock him on the head. As the argument continued, old frustrations started resurfacing. Is it the way they lock up the tap or the way they do anyhow in that compound? They had it up to here. Because, to be honest, this was no longer about Kojo. It wasn't about the gates. It was about years of accumulated rubbish. Kojo begged. The tenants begged this man. Even Auntie Abena offered to personally buy a new padlock if the landlord would just open the gate. But nothing worked. Finally, Kojo checked the time. He looked at the gate, then he looked at the landlord. He looked at his future. And nobody even told him what to do at this point. Because my guy went to find a huge long cane and he started destroying the padlock. Bah! The entire compound jumped. He hit it the second time. Bah! Auntie Abena covered her mouth. Then he hit it again the third time. And the padlock surrendered. Before anybody could process what had just happened, Kojo picked up his file, dusted it, adjusted his shirt, and took off like a man chasing his destiny before he boarded a bus. Omo, because tell me why he should miss an interview just because of his stupid landlord. For a while, everybody just kept quiet because they were still in a little bit of shock. Then Auntie Abena raised both hands and shouted, "Go and prosper!" And the rest of the neighbors shouted, "Amen." Mr. Mensah nearly swallowed his blood pressure. The man started pacing around the compound, pointing fingers and issuing threats like a politician who had just lost an election. "You people have been testing me in this compound. I will serve all of you quit notice. You have been testing me. You will learn a lesson today. Try me and see." Mensah continued frying her fish. You think I'm joking? Percy continued brushing his teeth. For the first time since anybody could remember, everybody completely ignored this man. And that hurt him far more than the broken padlock. By the evening of that day, Mr. Mensah returned to the compound looking happier than a man who just won a court case. Ha! 2 police officers followed behind him. Oh, yes. Prince followed too, walking with so much confidence that you would think he was one of the officers. The moment the tenant saw them, everybody came outside. Auntie Abena abandoned her soup. Kwesi abandoned his television. Even people who normally avoided drama suddenly developed an interest in community affairs. Then Mr. Mensah pointed dramatically at Kojo. "Officer, that's him. That is the criminal who destroyed my padlock." The officer nodded and wrote some things down. Then he looked at the tenants and asked, "Is this true?" Nobody wanted to answer. They stayed quiet. They started looking at each other, waiting for who would talk first. Then Auntie Abena cleared her throat and said, "No, officer, it is not true." Uh-uh. The landlord spun around so fast his slippers nearly tore. "What do you mean no?" The officer raised his hand. "Let her speak, please." Then he looked at the crowd. "Did Kojo break the padlock?" And they answered almost immediately, "No, sir." This time it was louder, more voices joined. The officer frowned. "Did Kojo sleep in this compound last night?" All of them answered together, "No, sir." The officers looked confused at this point. If he didn't sleep here last night, then who broke the padlock? Everybody remained quiet at first. And then, as if they had a spiritual meeting, all of them pointed towards one person unanimously. Prince. They pointed at Prince, and the landlord's soul nearly left his body. Prince almost swallowed his tongue. "Me? Officer, they are lying!" Prince shouted. The officer looked around. All of them? All of them cannot be lying at the same time. Meanwhile, the compound people kept pointing at this guy. None of them lowered their hands, oh, not even one person. Then the officer turned to Prince. "You mean everybody suddenly woke up this evening and agreed to accuse you? That can't happen." Prince opened his mouth and closed it. Then the floodgates of heaven opened. "Officer, this boy locked me out of my bathroom for 3 hours. You will not imagine the tyranny we have been enduring in this compound. Officer, he even hid the water tap key. Officer, he switched off my electricity and claimed it was spiritual. Officer, he told me my visitors were collecting too much oxygen." Haba. The officer paused and asked, "Too much what?" "Oxygen, sir." Even the second officer started laughing. Another tenant stepped forward and continued complaining. "Officer, they gave me a warning because my fish smell entered their window." The officer blinked. "The fish traveled specifically to their own window?" "That is what they said, oh." "My sister, you should have given them fish to eat. They were just hungry for fish." At this point, the officers were no longer investigating. They were being entertained. They couldn't believe the amount of things that these people have endured in the hands of Mr. Landlord and his son. Finally, Kojo explained what had happened that morning. The interview, the locked gate, the begging and the refusal. The officers listened quietly, nodding. When he finished, the first officer slowly turned to Mr. Mensah. "Sir," Mr. Mensah swallowed. Yes, officer." "You brought us here to arrest this young man." Yes, officer." "But then you conveniently forgot to mention that you locked him inside the compound while he was trying to attend a job interview." Mr. Mensah adjusted his shirt and said, "Well, and you forgot to mention that multiple tenants begged you to open the gate." Officer, rules are rules now." "Ha! Rules are rules, eh?" "Yes, officer." The officer pointed at the tenants and said, "These people are tenants, not prisoners." At this point, the second officer stepped forward and said, "And you," he pointed at Prince, "why are you behaving like deputy landlord? Like father, like son?" And then the verdict landed. The first officer opened his notebook and said, "Mr. Mensah, you have wasted police time with a misleading complaint. And for that, you will pay a fine of 20,000 cedis." "Sure?" The compound gasped. Prince gasped. Mr. Mensah gasped the loudest. And the officer wasn't even finished though. "Secondly, if another complaint about harassment, illegal punishments, locked water taps, locked bathrooms, or unreasonable restrictions reaches our station again, we will return. And this time around, we are bringing fire and brimstone." The second officer nodded and said, "And next time, we won't come for the tenants. We're coming for you." Omo, Mr. Mensah had no speech. Nothing could come out of his mouth. The officers closed their notebooks and left. They told him they would be expecting the 20,000 cedis and that he had only 2 days to come through. Everybody clapped. In fact, they were so happy. Mr. Mensah stood there looking defeated, While Prince stared at the ground, Mr. Mensah was regretting his decision of inviting police in the first place. Where is he going to get 20,000 CDs? Ah, this one pain him, but he had no choice. He had to come up with it. And then, like magic, all the rules in the compound started adjusting. The gates opened whenever there was emergency. The punishment stopped. Ah, it was like miracle. Oh. The compound people started enjoying themselves in the compound that they were paying rent for. 1 week later, Kojo returned with the news everybody had been praying for. He got the job, and that evening, the compound celebrated. They played music, they ate good food. Everybody was having fun. And the landlord came down. He took microphone and he decided to apologize. He apologized for all the rubbish he had been feeding his tenants all this while. And like play, in the spirit of the happiness, everybody forgave him on the condition that he doesn't try rubbish with them again. They partied into the night, having fun as they should. Nothing like rules at this point anymore. And that was a prayer answered. The end. And with that, we've come to the end of today's story, my paddies. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. Kindly drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Mark attendance, okay? And if you've not subscribed, now will be the perfect time to do so. I love you all, and I will see you in my next video. Ngwanu. Bye.